Welcome back to the channel, and in today's video we're doing a recap and review of Married at First Sight season 11 episode 10, Deal Breakers. So before we get started, I noticed that there's a lot of you watching the video. Please smash that like button and also comment and subscribe. I also do shout outs. So let's get into the show. So the first couple we're going to start with is Amelia and Bennett. And they started off discussing the chores and how they were going to allocate them. One thing that he did mention that was so funny about something his mom said is, what is love without a butt? So I don't know, they always coming up with something funny. But let's jump back into, everything with the chores. So one thing Amelia mentioned is that being that he lived in a tiny house is that he has to feel like everything has to be organized and in control. And I could see that. And she was like, I'll throw that in the garbage. But anyway, she has a different take on tidiness, and she's a little bit messy according to Bennett. But they really hash out everything from sweeping spaces to she get to answer the door and recycling. He gets to clean the bathroom. She gets to entertain the neighbors any way she wants, which of course he laughed that off, but it was funny. And of course she also had to handle the mail and the difficult phone calls. So they did pretty well with trying to organize. They did have some differences, but nothing is a deal breaker at this point. So then they meet up with Miles and Karen as they decided to play a game, and I forgot what that game was called, but they had a good time. And the thing is so funny is that whoever wins, the person had to choose where they want to be kissed by their partner. And of course Bennett did win that one particular time, and he got kissed on his stomach. They had a good time with Miles and Karen. And then I think also Amelia got her forearm kissed by Bennett. So I thought that was pretty cool. So while, he was sick, Amelia took care of him. And so to thank her for that, he decided to cook tofu and asparagus. So I'm assuming that they might be vegan or something. I could be wrong. I'm not sure. But he wanted to surprise her with a dinner. And he also had another pleasant surprise where he invited a couple of his friends to sing songs for her. I thought that was so nice. It was romantic, and she was so excited about that. She said she get this cozy feeling, and that the hairs was sticking out on her arms. And, she said marriage was about taking care of one another. Bennett actually said that. And that, it's good to see that they're actually doing things for each other, and they're being extremely creative about it. I thought that, just like Amelia said, that was very, very creative for Bennett to have his friends come and sing her a song. And it was so funny that song had started out by saying something as her body is a boarding cell for something. I'm like, oh my gosh. But that's Amelia and Bennett, Then they had a little conversation that got a little bit deeper. And pretty much he was trying to now get to know more about her and what she likes and what some of her favorite things. And what I do notice is that she didn't give a lot of definites. It was a lot of jovial or funny answers that she had given, but it wasn't on the serious tip. And of course, when they were out swinging, I guess on the beach because they did a bike ride, he was trying to ask, hey, is there anything about me that annoys you? And she couldn't come up with anything. And he was saying, is she being too agreeable? Because most of the relationships that I pretty much put people on the pedestal never worked out. So is she being realistic about us, or maybe is she just taking it for who it is and keeping it lighthearted? I'm not sure. I know he said that, the things that annoyed him was the dishes and not cleaning the glasses. And she didn't take too much of offense to it. But, it was interesting that he found things annoying, little things. And she was like, I'll let you know when I find something. And it seemed like he didn't take too well to that. I mean, you guys tell me what you think about that. Is he reading too much into it? Or is he actually thinking ahead as if to say, is she idealizing me? So we'll see how that goes. So let's get into Brett and Olivia. And they wake up, and this whole thing about this alarm. And I'm like, they find the smallest things to debate about. And Olivia is like, you don't supposed to automatically wake up to an alarm. And Brett was like, that's what an alarm is for. And, they had to have a conversation about chores and things like that. And she doesn't like to talk about chores because it makes it more complicated, and she even said marriage is not what is expected. It's complicated as well. And he was trying to help her make the bed, and she was even annoyed by that. She wanted to do it herself. I mean, seriously. And then she was like, well, I mean, at least he helping me, and, he's not running off letting me do all the work. And I'm like, really, Olivia? Come on. I mean, most guys is not going to help you make the bed, and I think that was kind of cool. Okay, so they decided to go rock climbing, and this is something that Brett likes to do. And Olivia asked, hey, how often you do? And he's like, once or twice a month. And she was saying that this looks like that it's fun, and dates like this make her feel hopeful, that maybe they'll feel a connection. And the thing is, she was really excited about the fact that she was able to, be there for him, in a entertainment way of helping him do this rock climbing wall. And then also too, when it was her turn, when he says, hey, I got you, she really felt like he really supported her, and encouraged her while, she was doing this. So it kind of lifted her spirits a bit. And I mean, it seemed like he was having a good time. I just think that these two poke at each other and they irritate each other. I mean, that's just my consensus. I mean, I'm not leaning to one side or the other with these two because they both have their flaws. And I think that if, maybe they just relax and enjoy themselves and stop nitpicking each other, maybe they wouldn't have so many issues, So, I mean, for the most part, it seemed like they had a good time doing the rock climbing wall. And, I just think that, just keep it lighthearted, have fun, laugh, talk. Now, the thing is with talking, kind of like what we've seen in Brett and Olivia, Brett jokes too much. It's too much sarcasm that you can't get to the seriousness in the conversation. And she wants to get serious, and he thinks she's too serious. So, I mean, it's always an impasse with these people, with these two. So they meet up with a couple of the other couples, and in this case, it was Henry and Christina and Amani and Woody. And so, they were pretty much, they didn't have too much to say because most of this conversation was led by the leaders at the table, which was Woody and Amani, and then the rest of the conversation was basically about Henry and Christina's relationship, which we'll get to when we get to that couple. But, I mean, the only other thing was the fact that they did go out for trivia. And here's my perspective. It's my, just my opinion. Brett wasn't into this. I mean, he actually called it stupid. And the girl, one of her friends asked, have you ever watched TV commercials? And he was like, I haven't watched a commercial in a decade. And I just think that this is ridiculous. And here's my thing. If this is something that you don't like, Brett, this is your wife. There's some compromise that got to happen. Make it fun. Olivia could have stepped in and said, okay, you know what, let's see what we can do. Let's try to come up with an answer. And he sat there complaining. And then to make things worse, the girlfriends became kind of demanding. Now, the one on his, I would say on his right side, she kept asking him questions like, hey, what do you think about this? You think you can answer it? But the other friend, I think the lady with the blonde hair, she was like, you better participate. And I'm like, okay. I mean, and he's looking like, are you talking to me? I mean, it's a way to do things. So it tells me a lot about her friends as well. I mean, Olivia have her ways, and obviously her friends are kind of similar. I mean, the girl on the, like I said, on the right side, she wasn't with the glasses. She was pretty cool, but the other one was really demanding. And when I think she said that to him, he really dug in his heels. And of course, he's like, you know what? Nah, I'm done. I'm done. And so, once she said that to him, Olivia was like, oh my God. And of course, she stormed out because she's not happy with the way everything is going. And, could he have maybe said, hey, this is my thing, but what make it fun? Throw some conversation in there with her to say, how can we make this fun, even though this is not something that I'm used to doing? And she could have been more engaging with him and say, look, I know you've never done this before, but this is how we make it fun. Neither of the two of them worked that whole thing out. So it's both of their faults. And then she had the conversation thinking, oh, I thought he would enjoy this, but, it frustrates me and annoys me that he doesn't. I mean, honestly, it was how it was handled. This could be handled so much differently by the both of them. So we'll see what happens with these two in the next episode. All right, let's get into Woody and Amani. Amani is not a morning person. Woody is definitely a morning person. And I mean, he's up getting ready. I think he says he's up at like 6 a.m. And of course, for a person that's not a morning person like Amani, that's going to be hard. It's just, and he's a person that also turns it in early in the evening, unless maybe he's going out on a weekend or something, from the way it sounds. But that comes with compromise. I mean, because she did mention she stayed up watching movies all night by herself. Now, I don't know Woody's work schedule. I know myself, because I do work a 9 to 5. I start at 6:30 in the morning, so I got to be in the bed. Maybe Amani does start late. So somewhere along the line, these two, and it's not going to be hard with these two because they're good at compromising and talking things out. But I just think that, they'll work it out. They got to get used to their sleeping and everyday habits. So another thing that came up in conversation, and again, Woody is cooking. This man loves to prepare food for him and Amani. I think that is so cool. But the conversation came up about who's doing the laundry, and she was like, hey, I'll put your laundry in. And I didn't get a picture of this, but he had a whole pile of laundry on the floor that she needed him to separate. If I'm going to do your laundry, you're going to need to separate it. But again, in this particular scene, she did mention in her commentary to producers that he's just not he's a morning person, but not an evening person. All right, so the other thing that came up is about disciplining children. And one thing about, especially if you were raised in the 70s as African Americans, getting whoopings were pretty common, okay? I'm not going to sugarcoat it. However, we're in a different day and age, and it's considered in some cases, like Amani said, corporal punishment. He comes from a different environment where that took place. Now, that doesn't mean that it's right, but he's also speaking from his environment, okay? And his thing is, you spank a kid here and there, you ain't talking about brutalizing. And Amani is like, no, you're not going to whoop our children, so I'm telling you right now, So that's something that is a huge conversation, especially Woody wants children with her. So they're going to have some discussion about disciplining the children and what's the best way. Now, he said, oh, I didn't think of it like that, which I think was a great response because he wasn't shut off to the idea, but it's something that he can actually have some conversation with her when the time comes in regards to, disciplining of children. And he said, I don't do stuff like that to my kids at school. And at the same time, he also said that kids do need some form of consequence, but it doesn't mean something physical. So they do go and meet up, like I said earlier, with Henry, Christina, and Olivia and Brett. And as usual, Woody and Amani always seem to be the leaders of the conversation. They are very sociable people. They are very outspoken people. They know how to engage people. I mean, that's why they were so easy with each other. And boy, were they enjoying a big bowl of crawfish. Now, I mean, for you guys, let me know in the comments, how good are they? I'm allergic to shellfish, but obviously this is a thing that they enjoy. But yeah, they were definitely trying to get the temperature of where these two couples were. Hey, what's going on with you, Henry and Christina? And, as I'll talk about later when I get to Henry and Christina, what their comments were. But I found this particular scenario pretty interesting because I would never expect Amani and Henry to actually have a sit down. So I obviously think, and I could be wrong, that this is definitely pushed by production. And they wanted her to kind of say, hey, where you guys at? It seems like you guys are doing a lot better. And, of course, Henry is like, nope. No, I get irritated. I'm irritated with her impatience. And again, I'm going to go into that later when we get to talk about Henry and Christina. But Amani was shocked that she was getting two different stories based on what was told in front of the group versus what he's telling her. What I don't kind of make me a little uncomfortable is the way production had her bring that out to Christina. I actually think that if that was going to be a deal breaker for Henry, Henry should have carried that information. And of course, it brought the drama to have Christina feeling some kind of way about that. Like, wait a minute, he never tell me impatience was going to be a deal breaker. And from what I know and what we've seen, and correct me if I'm wrong, I hadn't seen that in previous episodes. And I could tell by Amani's facial expression, she wasn't too comfortable with that. So I don't like how production put that together. But let me know in the comment what you guys think. So then let's talk about Woody. Woody also had a little meet and greet with his boy, Miles, because they go to this one shop to get their haircuts done. And, Woody is just gushing about Amani and how we're growing together. And, I told her I love her. And, and he actually, I heard him say he's in love with her. And Miles is like, whoa, stop the presses. Are you serious? He's like, yeah. And so Woody is like, well, where are you at? And he was like, well, if I told Karen that I'm in love with her, she would have a heart attack. That would be a quick way to get her to a heart attack. So, I mean, Woody is definitely all in. I'm just wondering if he's moving too fast. But people move at the speed that they want to, so I'm not going to criticize at all. So I think them dressed up, they look absolutely gorgeous together. I mean, that dress Amani got on is so nice. I love that. I wish I could find it for myself. But anywho, I also noticed that he pulled out the chair for her. So, of course, he's a gentleman. And she's just smiling from ear to ear. I mean, she is just over the moon. So they talked about when they had their little date night. She was talking about how much she loved date nights. And he was like, yeah, girl, you look good as hell. And I mean, she just eat that up. And that's what you're supposed to get, compliments like that from your significant other. And he's blowing kisses. And so he dropped the question, hey, does it scare you that I told you I love you? And she said yes and no. And she says no, mostly because she says that she noticed she doesn't have to be there at that point. But at the same time, yes, because she's like, oh my God, he loves me. And so she's now questioning herself to make sure that she's actually there. And he threw, and I don't know if this was a joke or if production made this drama, but he was like, well, either way, you can't leave me. We married. And she was like, yes, I can. And he was like, it's going to take a whole lot of paperwork and signatures in court and going through all of that. And it ain't going to be that simple. And she was like, if I don't want to be here, I don't have to be here. And part ways, that's true. But I also see where he could have picked up on, wow, you ready to jump that fast? Because I'm trying to be in this for the long run. And if you're not feeling the fact that you can't get to the love space with me, you out. So I don't know. They could have amped that up for, editing. I'm not sure. But it's something to consider with these two. If in fact, who's committed for the long run and where her fear lies. So we'll see. But I think they'll be fine. All right, let's move on to Karen and Miles. So, of course, Miles is full of anxiety because Karen left the apartment and she did not come back that night. So he slept alone, which, of course, made him upset. And they had a commentary with her, and she was not happy about the whole intimacy conversation that they had and him putting a sex date on the calendar, which we saw in last week's episode. And she said that she felt disrespected in her own home and that she felt unsafe. And so, like I said in the previous video, if there's a case, and I'm as we get further into this, it gets a little different because it seems that they kind of hashed this out. But if there's other underlying things you need to deal with before getting in any other relationship, you need to deal with that. Because when you say, I feel unsafe, I don't know what's that all about. We need to know more about that. And if it's going to come out, fine. If not, Karen knows what that is. So it definitely bothered him. I mean, it actually stirred up the anxiety that he has because, he did mention in episodes back that he is clinically depressed. She finally was able to be in the apartment to have some conversation with him, and he just let her talk. And she said that she told him it made me feel unsafe. I don't mind talking about it. It's just how you did it, putting a date on the calendar. And he didn't say anything. And he said, you talking about sex, we just had our first kiss. And even if it is, we are married, that doesn't grant access to me, is what you think. Guys, tell me in the comments what you think about that statement. Marriage, there are certain compounds, I guess, on the foundation of relationship and marriage. But let me know what you think about that statement, okay? He said, you know what? I apologize for making you uncomfortable. And she was like, I'll be more assertive and considerate. What he did mention, he did too much, and he want to do what it takes to earn her trust. And, she appreciated his apology. And then she's also going to work on some things too, where she can be, different or grow a connection. So we'll see how these two move forward. All right. So again, like I said earlier with Amelia and Bennett, Karen and Miles also met up with them to play this particular game. I still don't remember the name of it. I tried to write it down, but they said it so fast. Anywho, I saw her actually kind of slowly let her walls down. She kissed him on the forehead because, should I say forehead? I said forehead. On the forehead because he won. And there was a lot of more physical contact. I mean, she was worried about PDA, at first, but she kind of let her guard down in regards to that, which I'm glad she did. And she actually got a kiss in for his, she got a kiss, one of the two. Well, they kissed for their second win of this particular game. And I mean, he's excited. I mean, he's over the moon that, she's definitely melting. and that she's actively trying to make a connection and build something slowly. So I think that's really cool. I hope they can get to a place where they can make this work, but we'll see. So they had another sit down conversation when they got home, and Karen asked, "Hey, did you have a good time?" And he was like, Amelia and Bennett always make things a lot more fun than what they really are. And one thing that they did mention, because Amelia and Bennett asked them if they felt merry, and they said they felt merry-ish. So I thought that was funny. But they was like talking about their favorite colors, because he didn't know her favorite color, and so she was like, my favorite color is red. And she was like, I know your favorite color is blue. They talked about all the shoes that he had, and that he didn't need any more shoes, because they also talked about shoe sizes. And I think he said he wore 12 or 12 and a half. And he was like, you gonna buy me some shoes? And he was like, you gonna buy me some shoes, but you don't need any more shoes. So I thought that was funny. Talked about the birthmark and things like that with the family. And, he's getting butterflies. They're talking about cuddling. And she was like, I like to snuggle. And I'm like, okay, Karen, what you doing, girl? You getting in kind of comfy, cozy with Miles? So she's slowly getting there. We have to see, and this goes back to, the conversation. Because honestly, I truly think that Miles really want intimacy. And I mean, granted, they've had a couple kisses and some snuggling, but they're definitely not on the same page as Amani and Woody. And, there should be no pressure. It's up to Karen and Miles how they want to move. But Miles also needs to remember in the long run as time goes is that he has needs too. Just as much as she has them and she's trying, that's the same thing Woody was saying, was like, look, you need to make sure that that's something that you are also focused on, is making sure you get your needs met. And don't necessarily mean intimacy. He likes word of affirmation. So making sure that that's also coming his way too. So, we'll see. I think there was a little movement from everything that happened from the end of last week's show to the beginning of this week's show with this couple. I just need to see a little bit more movement from Karen. And one of the things that she decided to do to build a connection is take him to go yoga, to do some yoga. And I thought this was a pretty good move, because yoga can be, especially couples yoga, can be a very sensual activity, as we've seen. And being that it was her idea, like the yoga instructor said, you got to put in the work. And Miles is the receiver. And he was definitely more than happy to let Karen do her thing when it came to him. And it was interesting that, because I was wondering, is she really going to want to touch him? And in some of the places, seemed like she was really comfortable. I mean, she was looking at his eyes. She was going up the front of his legs, and they had the camera right there. And I'm like, you actually touching his torso? And she's facing him? So I thought that was pretty interesting. That obviously took, I'm going to give her brownie points for this, because it probably took her actively trying to give, in this case, to actually do that with him. Because, I mean, we go from feeling unsafe to now you touching around his pelvis area, you're touching his hands, you're giving him a body massage, you're touching his feet. I mean, all of that. And she even would give him a head massage. I'm like, okay, Karen, you putting in some work. All right, hey, I'm a sucker for love. So if you're going to do this, let's do this. I'm on board. But, don't take 10 steps forward and go 20 steps back next week. So just keep improving. Keep doing what you're doing, because Miles is definitely receptive. And this could have been your form of intimacy. Because, I mean, caressing and massages is definitely very intimate because you're touching someone else's body, especially your significant other. So hopefully we got a little bit of hope this week, guys, with this couple. We will see what happens as time go on. All right, let's talk about our last couple in this episode, and that is Henry and Christina. So with these two, it started off lighthearted because they came off of a better ending episode last week. Once everything had gotten out in the open about, what she wanted to talk to him about, and they were talking about doing laundry and how they fold their towels and things like that. And Christina says she sees him as being more and more adorable. And honestly, I think if she's quick, because she so quickly put her defense mechanism up, and I think because of her past, this is why, and she just goes left. So, I just hope that they can bounce back, but we'll see what happened later. So, of course, there's the conversation with Woody and Amani and Brett and Olivia, and Brett was pretty interesting because he was talking about how sexy she look and is, and of course, I'm looking at him like, really? And I think that shocked the mess out of Christina too, because he just called me sexy in front of all these people. But of course, he's not doing that behind closed doors, so it's kind of like giving mixed signals, Henry. And of course, it was revealed when Amani had that sit-down conversation with him, and then she turned around and Amani had that conversation with Christina. And Christina's like, whoa, 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 whoa. Again, like I said in the previous commentary with Amani told her, that's a deal breaker that you're impatient and that you're annoying and irritating. And, Christina's like, wait, he never told me that. This is a surprise to me. He just told us downstairs that I was this sexy person. And Olivia's like, well, maybe he can't handle the strong person that you are. And, Christina is just like, okay, he's supposed to tell me that. And I totally agree with her. You don't go behind your girl or your wife back, tell her friends, and then they come back and tell you. That's not a cool move. So Christina brought that up, hey, did you have a conversation with Amani? And he was like, yeah. And she was like, well, what did you say? And he said, well, she was giving me advice. And I said, don't beat around the bush. You better be honest. And he came out and said, I did talk about your impatience. And Christina was like, well, wait a minute. You told her that it was a deal breaker. You never told me that. Well, in a roundabout way. No, Henry. You hardly ever communicate. So when did you tell her that her impatience is a deal breaker in that term? And she was like, you know what? Just tell me, where do we stand? Because I need to know where you are. And he was like, well, I'm trying to overcome difficult things. And, my thing with these two is that they could be smooth if they stop doing things to irritate the other. Because honestly, that was a bad move on Henry's part. And I'm hoping that production didn't push that with him and Amani, because all it did was create drama. They were making little bits of stride, from the whole salsa dancing to the golfing and calling her sexy and all of this stuff, and then now you take 2 steps back. Now, the other part of this is if they did push this and Henry wasn't being honest and giving mixed signals, that's not cool. And, she was like, you know what, okay, fine. I need to know from you, where do I stand? And he was like, well, right now, I don't know. I just don't. And then she's like, well, why are you sticking around? And he was like, she said, if you can make a choice now, what would you do? And he was like, if I make a choice right now or with the way things are going on, no, I can't do it, but I'm willing to try. And she was like, well, you know what, since you said that my being irritable and, things like that is a deal breaker. Your lack of communication is a deal breaker for me, because that's the biggest thing you need to do is communicate. So, they did the questions in the bowl, and that kind of calmed things down. They started talking about how cool turtles are and how they have a little bit of chemistry and they want things to be good between them again. So, we'll see how they go. I hope they bounce back after everything, and that is it for them. So I'm going to do post notification shout out, because I always shout out my subscribers and people who watch the show. And the first one is to Deborah Williams. Thank you so much for engaging in the channel. I really appreciate your comments. Also to Yvette Monroe. Thanks for being a new subscriber from the Bahamas. Welcome, welcome, welcome. Thank you for your engagement. And then Pat Gray. Thank you so much. You guys, if you want to be shouted out, please smash that like button, comment, and subscribe, and we'll see you next time.